with the routers lifts and everything covered out of the way, I think I talked a little bit about some of the router jigs that I like, or that use a lot, that are pretty handy. Talked a little bit earlier about raised panel doors. Everybody know what a raised panel door is? This is the raised panel. So it's just a center panel that has that raised kind of profile in the middle. And then you put your rail. Rails are the horizontal piece, stiles are the vertical. And then you have a cope and stick joint that goes together like that. This is the cope and stick fit. They call them rail and stile bits a lot, but there's a lot of other rail and stile bits that don't cut a cope and stick joint. So it's kind of a misnomer sometimes, but that's what we do. So in order to do that, you cut this. This takes a 3-bit setup to make these kind of doors. This is a set that I've got from MLCS. So you get cope and stick bits, and since they look similar, I have to always remember, I wrote on them, one's got an S and one's got a C. So my stick bit will cut this side profile, the edge profile. So it's made, let's see if I can get this right. So it's in the router table like this. Are you seeing this okay, Paul? So that when you come along and it cuts in a pass, it's got in this case, the OG profile for what would be the top of the rail, and then it's got a slot cutter to cut the slot for the raised panel. And it does those in one pass. It can do that. I don't mean literally that you make the whole thing in one pass, but it can do that. I advise you to move your fence forward and take it in incremental passes, but make that cut so it makes a perfect rail, or a perfect, this is the stick part of the fit. So use those, you cut your rails and stiles with the same, so the inner profile of all the panel, or all these rails and stiles have that bit. So if you have, say you have a center rail in just a single panel door, you'd have 2 rails and two stiles. If you have maybe multiples, you have a 2-panel door, then you're going to have a middle rail. And in that case, you would cut the stick profile on both edges. So in this case, I don't, so I just did one edges. So you do both of those. Then you come back with the cope bit, and they're made as a matched set. So when you put it in your router, it'll come in and cut the exact same profile then to mate with the stick cut you just made, and it'll do that on the end grain of your rails. So it fits just like that. So it cuts basically the inverse profile and then the tongue to fit into the slot, so it's a perfect fit. And in order to do that, you have to cut these this way. So you're cutting them basically perpendicular to the fence. And that's, with that narrow rail, you can't just do that free-handed. You're going to run into all kinds of problems. You're going to get hurt, or you're going to tear up your boards. It's going to be a mess. So the way you do that is with a coping sled. And a coping sled is simply just any kind of, there's a number of these on the market. This happens to be an MLCS model. It's just a simple thing where you put your rails in between this, put the sled up against the fence, put your rail in there, push it against the fence, lock your clamp in place. That'll hold the rail, and then you just pass it across the bit, which you've set the fence to the right height, to the right distance from the fence, and then it makes that end grain cut so that it's perfectly flat and smooth, and it'll fit into your rail. But trying to hold that with anything, even just a loose backer board, it's really too much to try to move it around, because there's a lot of torque on end grain. So you really want to get something that's got that clamped in. You can buy a jig like this. There's plans on Wood Magazine. We've made a couple of coping sleds over the years. So if you look back through the search history on your flash drive, you can find coping sleds. So you can make your own. Real simple thing to do, but to make that end grain cut, you do need something to hold that bit really, or this rail really securely. So with that said, then you take your third bit, you get a panel raiser, and that then makes the panel. In this case here, it cuts the profile, the OG again, and then it's got a back cutter, we call that. And what that does is it cuts the profile on the bottom side, and then it cuts the back cutter, makes, again, a nice little tenon that fits into the stick groove, into that slot that we cut earlier. It makes it fit exactly the same. Some of these have adjustable, where you can add spacers in there to make this tenon basically a little thicker if you need to, or thinner, so you can take that in or out. But this one's made perfect fit. So then you just do this all the way around. And with something like this, of course, take that in incremental cuts. Don't try to make this in one heavy pass, because this will really tear it up. And then always, when you're routing these, always do in grain first, and start on an in grain and then just work your way around, so that any tear out you've got here will always be taken care of by your next pass down there. So in grain, edge, in grain, edge. Always do it route in that order. And always leave your panels, in case you do it, leave them short, so they've got room to expand inside of your rails and stiles. You don't want to have that split and blow it out and break your joint open. So that's basically one of the jigs that's really critical to making rails and stiles, making raised panel doors. This set has some other bits in there for cabinet making, but you can buy those as 3-piece bit sets. The scope and stick bits come as a matched set, so you always buy those together. I showed this earlier, Dovetail box. I made this on my router table. It's a 1 1/8 space through dovetail, 8 degrees, made with a Keller dovetail jig. Anybody here familiar with the Keller jig? It's been around for 35, 40 years probably. It's just a simple, when you buy this, you get this phenolic template. They also sell them in aluminum. I got the phenolic, and then it just tells you the instructions of how to mount it to a block of wood, so that you get there's a little bit of spacing. You do some cutting and fitting, and once you get it set, you never have to adjust it again. So that when you do this, you use bearing guided bits in your router table, clamp your wood vertically on here, and then you just follow you just go in and out like that, cut your rails and your tails and your pins with that, cut tails on one side, pins on the other, using a straight bit and a dovetail bit, and it's just almost a flawless system. I did a video on this once. It's on woodmagazine.com. It was called 12-minute video, or 12-minute dovetails. It was a video of that, 12-minute dovetails. So I cut a 4-sided box with these in 12 minutes, changing out the bits and everything included. It's such a quick, intuitive way to do that. Yes, sir. Keller, like it's Keller. That's the name of the dovetail jig. This just happens to be one of a few that does the same thing. There's another one called the Katie jig, just like the woman's name Katie. That's another one. It has the ability to have adjustable fingers. That's an advantage it has versus this one. This one's a fixed template. And then I mentioned the Lee jig earlier. They have one that works on a router table as well, so you can do half blinds and throughs. This one will only do through dovetails and box joints. The Lee jig will do those two plus the half blind. Because it has a slot through the center. When you're cutting those half blinds, you have to be able to cut one horizontally and one vertically, and you do them both at the same time. And that Lee jig, I can't remember the model number, but you could find it on their website. It's a really, really cool thing to be able to, so if you do drawer joints, you can do those on the router table. I find that a lot easier than doing them by hand, because when you're doing routers with a router dovetails with a jig in a vise or something, you're mostly working in the blind. You don't want to get down underneath and watch the bit, and so you're just kind of going by feel as you kind of feel those where if it's working on a guide bushing or a bearing guided bit, either one, you're just kind of feeling your way along those fingers. I like being able to see what I'm doing. This is one of my favorite bits, favorite dovetail jigs, and I don't remember what this sells for. It's a couple $100 maybe or something like that, but it's well worth it if you like to make dovetails. You can make box joints on a table saw, but again, like I said earlier, I like to make mine on the router table just because I just feel safer on there, and it just makes it just more comfortable for me. So I can use this, make these on a router table with a jig that I got from Rockler. It's a real simple jig that works easily with use a spiral bit. It comes with, when you buy this kit, it comes set up to do 1/4, 3/8, and 1/2 inch box joints, but does not include the bit. So you have to supply your own bit or buy one of theirs. But it gives you the spacer. This blue strip is the spacer bar that sets that, so it gives you the right spacing. And the way that works is you just chuck your bit in the router, fix that, set this down over the bit, lock it in place, and then that won't move. The jig won't move. Then you just use this sliding carriage, fits down in there, hold your board, which normally I would be standing back with my back to you to do this, but I'm going to show you. So you hold your board here, and then you just make a pass through, standing on end, take your board, lift it up, move it over, set it onto the blue spacer bar, that joint you just cut, and then make a next pass, and then it's just lift and cut, keep making those. and it's a simple way to do that. This kit sells for maybe 75 bucks, I want to say, something like that. Nice little kit to be able to do that. This is Rockler. You can find it on Rockler's website or in their catalogs. We did a similar kind of a jig in Wood Magazine. Again, it'll be on, the plans for that are on there. Ours, rather than registering in the miter slot, I think registered off the end of the table or off the front edge of the table, something like that. But it worked in a similar fashion. I don't remember the exact things, but that's on your flash drive with the back issue history. So just kind of search box joints and you'll find that. But that's a real easy thing. And then just as an aside, Rockler has clamping calls that go with box joints that are really handy. So if you're clamping them with a web clamp or a strap clamp, they make these plastic calls that match, so they have the fingers just in the reverse, so it'll help bring those together because you can't get your clamps right up against those, because you usually leave your fingers proud a little bit, but those clamping calls let you be able to pull those up really tight. So I didn't bring those to show you, but those are really handy if you're looking at doing that. And then this is a Mitre spline box. So it's just a simple box made with miters. First, you just start out making a Mitre box. Just glue it together, get it dry, sand it fairly smooth, get the edges back nice, crisp, and clean. And then cut slots to put these Mitre keys in. And at the risk of sounding like a shill for Rockler, I don't work for them. I don't get any money from them. So I just like, they make a lot of really nice jigs. So it's just unfortunate. I guess I just happen to have a couple here, but they're really good jigs. This one works similar in that you put this carriage down over your bit, so put a dovetail bit in there if you want. You can also use a straight bit, a spiral bit, anything you want to be able to make a slot through there across the corners. And then this carriage rides back and forth on there, and it's just a simple thing, just holds it again at a 45-degree angle. You put your box or whatever it is in there, picture frame, anything, and then you can adjust these. You can adjust these side to side to, theoretically, maybe you can adjust this one, but you can slide them to get your box snug. Put it down in the holder. So set your box down here. Here, let me get another one. I've got one that's got the grooves already cut. So you put your box in there, slide it forward over the bit, make the cut, and then just keep rotating the box without moving that fence. And that way you get all four sides at the same distance from your top edge. And then if you want to do it so that it's mirror image on the other, you just turn it around, put the bottom edge against there, do the same thing. And then you've got these, just to make a one pass, because with a dovetail bit, you get one chance. You can't make that in multiple passes. It's got to be that one height. If you try to do that, you're not going to get a perfect fit. So get those slots cut in your mitered box. Take this jig off then, leave the bit in the router table, just whatever dovetail bit. It works with any degree dovetail bit. Doesn't have to be any certain degree. So whatever it is you've got in there, I think this was a 14 degree. So then, I'm sorry? But you have to have the box built first. Yes, you have to have your mitered box already glued together. And as you know, just a mitered box in itself is not really strong. And the purpose of the splines is to help strengthen it and add some contrast. Yeah, some little pizzazz to it. So get your box done, cut the slots, then leave your bit in there, set it the same height, and then just get a piece of stock that whatever you want to use for your splines to whatever thickness. This was about, I think, 5/8, something like that. Bring your fence up to the bit. This thing, I got this edge out here. So bring your fence up there to it, to about the center. Make a pass until you get to where the bit is cutting a perfect. So I would cut this side first to where you get the bottom edge where it makes a perfect cut, and it doesn't have a little lip down at the bottom of the dovetail. So you get that side cut, then you flip the board over, and then you make the same cut on the other side, and test and just keep nibbling away. You might have to make a little bit deeper cut, so keep moving your fence as needed until it fits perfectly in the slots that you cut. Thankfully this still fits because I made these a couple of weeks ago. So you just do that in there until it fits good. Then you go to the table saw and rip this dovetail spline off of the blank, and then just cut them in short pieces, glue them into the box, cut them off and sand them flush. So just a simple little thing. You can just make a lot of this stock the same, and if you know you're going to use that same bit again, you can make up some of this, and it's always going to fit, hopefully. but a simple little way to do that. Unless something happens, sometimes shrinking and swelling with the seasonal changes will affect that. But then that just gives you a nice little look to, so it strengthens that miter joint and gives a little bit more a nice look to it. So those are a couple of my favorite jigs there. Okay, and then I want to talk a little bit about the Incra table, because this one's really different than the others. I don't know, are you seeing all this okay, Paul? Yeah. Okay. So are you guys familiar with the Incra system? Anyone here? Anyone own one by chance? Okay. Okay, we got a couple. Table saw? Yeah, okay. So the Incra system is a little bit different than all the other router tables. It is a router table, but it's got, the key to the Incra system is really the fence. And this is a really unique kind of a system in that with all of these, you just set the fence to whatever you want, your bit and all this. This one, the fence is got an incremental positioning system. So you're able to move this fence in as fine as 1/1000th of an inch. So you can move this with a micro adjuster so that this fence slides back and forth from a fixed position. So your table is longer this way, and your fence sets this, so you can move it back and forth to fit. And then by this incremental positioning, you can cut all kinds of intricate joinery thanks to the math that they've already done for you. And it also can work as a regular router table. So if you can put these auxiliary faces on there, and then they can move side to side just like any other router fence. So you could do roundovers and chamfers and whatever, and you can do anything. If you're not cutting joinery necessarily using their templates in their system, you can just use it as a regular router fence. But if you want to do something like, I don't know if you can see anywhere on here, they cut, you can do what they call double dovetails, double box joints, which are basically an inlaid joint. So it's a double dovetail is a dovetail joint that's been cut and glued together twice so that you can get a little inlay look. And the same with the box joint. You're just cutting and assembling it twice. And this manual it's really good. That'll show you all how to do that. It comes with these templates that work. You put those into the fence. The templates here that they're maybe a little hard to see from there, but it's all set up and it tells you which template to use for which joint. And all you do then is just move the fence to each one of these markings as indicated in the book, and you just can't miss on it. So it tells you some of the joints here you can do: dovetails, box joints, different sizing, different spacing. It tells you everything you need to know from the workpiece thickness, the size of the bit, the height of the bit, the spacing that you want between them, and it tells you all that. And then it even tells, let's see here, where am I at? With double dovetails, then it shows you how to do that, the system, and it tells you, and you can do all this with one bit in those cases. So you have one dovetail bit can make this whole joint. This was set up with a 14-degree dovetail bit. And unfortunately, I didn't bring a box in. Last year, I taught this class here of how to make double dovetails, and I made, I don't know what, Lucas, 25 boxes or something like that, and I forgot to bring one in. So I've got a bunch of them stashed around places here. But with this, when you buy the fence system, you get the manual and all these templates that come with it. So it is part of the system. But then you start adding all the other stuff, kind of a la carte or whatever. So you can buy the top, you can buy the fence and the top. You could just buy the fence system and then make your own cabinet and all that. Same with all these others. You can add that down to it, or you can buy their system as well, from the stand to the dust collection housing. You can buy their lift, which their lift, which says Incra on it, is actually the JSM master lift that says Incra. So the only difference between it was private labeled for them by JSM. So it's exactly the same as that one over there, the master lift. The only difference is that it has Incra engraved on there, and that it has these metallic insert plates to go around the bits, and then it has magnets in the thing to hold those down. The only difference being here is that you get dust collection by the dust falls through these slots, and then that housing around the router bit sucks it out. It's unbelievable dust collection. So that's the only real difference for that. So if somebody says, "Oh, I'd rather have the Incra lift than the JSM," well, they're the same. They're the same lift. Just the difference here is right on this. But you can certainly get either one of these, and I got to remember which way that goes in here. There it goes. I have to put that back. That only fits a certain way there. it's close enough for now. But this one works really well. This is it's a pricey kit to get into. And again, I don't work for Incra. I don't get any royalties if they sell any. I just tell, again, as a tool tester, this is just a system that really wowed me with what it's capable of doing. And it looks intimidating, but it's actually pretty easy once you get into it. I was just curious of how it would work, and I wanted to learn to do it. And I contacted the guys from Incra. They came up here and spent, I don't know, half a day training, and by the end of the day, I was doing this by myself and making them. So it's such a simple system to really use because they've done all the math for you. It's just a way to do it. And then if you just want to make it as a router table, it does all that too. So if you're just looking for a router table and you don't want to do some of their intricate joinery, then this is overkill. You don't need to buy that. You can buy any of these router tables for that. This one is just really good for also being able to do that. You know, now if you're going to, when are you going to do an inlaid dovetail or a double dovetail? It's going to be for something that you want to show off, a jewelry box or some kind of a fancy, you know, thing like that. You won't do your drawers like that because who wants to open up a drawer and see that? I mean, it's not a necessary thing. So really you would only buy this system if you really want to get into that, I believe. This fence also works with the table saw. This gentleman said he's got one on there. You can use the same kind of a fence setup that works that way. I've not used it on a table saw, but I know it does work in the past. I know other editors that would have tried that, and you can buy that. It's certainly good. So it's a nice setup. But yeah, as you see it here with the whole system and the router motor, you're looking at about $1,300 in this. So it's quite a bit to invest in that. By the same token, if you buy the top end system from Jessim and Woodpeckers, you're looking at about the same money, about $1,200 to buy their full kit systems. They're in that same ballpark. And I don't remember off the top of my head what the bench dog system is, but it's high up there too to do that.